Host of Life, Liberty, and Levin. And Mark, welcome to our coverage here. You listen to the Prime Minister. He obviously has a position on this. It appears that he's either threatening publicly Hamas to get them back to the negotiation table, or they're going to go all in on Gaza. Now, on the first point, there's already word out of Egypt and Qatar tonight that they're trying to pressure the Hamas leaders to continue negotiations so that this does not happen. Forecasted for us. What do you see?
First of all, I'm really proud of you for going in there like few others have, Bill, really, and reporting from there. I've been in Israel many times. I'll say a couple of things. Number one, there's always protests in Israel, always protests against Netanyahu in Israel, always in Tel Aviv or always in Jerusalem. If Netanyahu decides to sneeze, they don't want him to sneeze. This man is underestimated. He's basically defeated Hezbollah with the United States. He's basically defeated the Iranians. He wants to take this Hamas group and eliminate it. Now, a couple of things. What you're also witnessing there is something that's never happened in world history. You're watching an army that is both trying to feed the people in a country or a state or a territory that they're at war with and defeat their leadership. There's not another example of that ever, anywhere, certainly not by us. So, of course, it's complicated and difficult. Number two, their soldiers are on the line. When the Israelis, when they're feeding the population and fighting Hamas, their soldiers' lives are on the line. Number three, I'll bet you didn't see too many Arab countries with trucks and pallets and all the rest trying to feed the Palestinians there. It's mostly now the United States and Israel. The UN has been more of a problem than a help. Number four, as I listen to this, occupation of Gaza. It's a weird term. They're not going to occupy Gaza. They're going to, as they try and corner Hamas, they have to encircle Hamas. That would be like us saying we were occupying parts of Europe when we were fighting the Nazis. We weren't occupying Europe, but our military has to be there physically present, has to watch behind them, have to watch for any blitzkriegs, have to watch for all this stuff. So in order to protect your military, as you make gains, I guess technically you occupy these areas. They want nothing to do with governing Gaza. The Prime Minister told you that. What they're trying to do now is figure out how to destroy Hamas and get those hostages out. As for future negotiations, you had Steve Witkoff there, the President of the United States. They know exactly what was taking place in those negotiations. Witkoff himself has tried. Our president has tried. What exactly is there to negotiate? What exactly is left? Hamas is starving its own people. It's killing its people. It's killing Israelis. It is starving the hostages. And so Netanyahu, what's he supposed to do? Surrender and give up? Somebody in war has to win, and somebody in war has to lose. And Hamas has to lose. As for Qatar and Egypt working on this, Egypt borders Gaza. You'll notice there they have a very big wall that is fortified. They will not allow any of the Palestinians out. They will not allow them to leave. Obviously, Israel's not going to allow them into their country because they don't know if they're getting Hamas or what they're getting, which is very, very interesting because nobody puts pressure on Egypt. And the second point I would raise is who is providing food to these people? You don't see Saudi Arabia in there, but Qatar. Qatar's involved in negotiations. This would be the same Qatar that funded Hamas. This would be the same Qatar that gave safe haven to billionaires who are Hamas terrorists. And people should ask themselves, how is it that you have billionaires who are Hamas leaders? How is it that you have multimillionaires that are leaders of the Palestinian Authority? When you have refugee camps or when you have other people who are hungry, how is that possible? Because they're mobsters, because they're corrupt. And I just wanted to point out, I think Netanyahu is underestimated the way Donald Trump is underestimated. It's about time people figure out that the guy kind of knows what he's doing and under very, very extremely difficult and stressful circumstances.
Yeah, Mark, good to have you here. Bill also asked the Prime Minister to respond to accusations that Israel's committing genocide. Here was his response.
We did something that no army in history ever did. We're supplying humanitarian food to the enemy's population because we distinguish between combatants and non-combatants. We put in 2 million tons of food. I mean, if we wanted to commit genocide, We wouldn't give 2 million tons of food to the population.
Reminds me of Mike Huckabee recently saying if Israel's attempting genocide, they're really, really bad at it. What was your response?
You know, it's very frustrating and upsetting to me because we know what genocide looks like. Genocide looks like what the communist Chinese are doing to the Uyghurs. Genocide looks like what Assad in Syria did to other Muslims. Genocide looks like what the Houthis are doing to other Muslims in Yemen. Genocide looks like what Hamas did to those Israelis on October 7th. Genocide looks like what the Islamists are doing to Christians in Africa. Israel doesn't practice genocide. Israel doesn't believe in genocide. If Israel wanted to blow Gaza off the face of the earth, despite what you see in those buildings, it could. It has the equipment to do it. If Israel was so interested in genocide, it wouldn't be moving, as you all reported, 1 million people to try and protect them and save them as they move further into Gaza to try and get these Hamas cockroaches and finally put an end to them. And so I think Ambassador Huckabee is 100% right. The world knows what genocide looks like. It's the Holocaust. It's what happened with Rwanda. It's what happens with Mao and Stalin and all the rest. And so for people to project that on top of a small democracy that's surrounded, that has done something, as the Prime Minister said, that no army has ever done. They're feeding the population as best as they can while they're under fire by the leadership that the population voted for. They're trying to feed the population while the UN is undermining them and working with Hamas, while Egypt won't let people out, while Jordan won't take any. They're 70% Palestinian. So here you have the Jewish state trying to feed the Palestinians, trying to liberate the Palestinians, trying to destroy Hamas, which attacked them unprovoked, which is killing their own people. And so now they're accused of genocide? I think that's about as sick as it gets, quite frankly.
Mark, thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Mark.
Mark Levin,
God
appreciate
bless
your
you.
reaction. Yeah, you bet.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.